Hey everyone, it's Michael. David's not with us today. He's having internet problems. And you might have noticed that we took a little break. So it's sometimes we have to have a little break from these things. Today is going to be a little bit different because I want to talk about software development, which is my background. So bear with me while I rant about this stuff and look forward to it. You're listening to Nerds Out of Water with Michael Lobb and David Camis. Nerds Out of Water is a podcast brought to you by me. I'm Michael Lobb. I run a company called TeamScale, and we help companies make their IT projects happen on time, on budget, on track, basically. And also with David Camis, who is the director of One Bright Cloud. One Bright Cloud is a company that deals with AI, automated vehicles, and drones, and all that sexy stuff that is like brand new technology, cutting it, bleeding edge. And they're the ones that deal with this. They build things within smart cities and all of that. So anyway, today, as I mentioned, we're talking about software development and a couple of the mistakes that people make when they are embarking on a software development project. One of the things that happens a lot that I see is companies, and particularly the people we're dealing with, thinking that it's really easy to develop an app or a website or something that integrates their platforms. The basis of this is, a lot of the time IT or devs just make things happen, and that gives people a false sense of security. They think, oh, don't worry, the IT department will fix this. And we'll get into that later, but we see this all the time where people have come up with an idea or they've been to a trade show, for example. Trade shows are just really great, and from my perspective, I love them. But when let's say a marketing director goes to a trade show, they often come home with a sense of these things are going to be easy. Let's try and do this. Let's put this bit of software in, and you'll see the collective people within an IT department putting their head in their hands, saying, "Hang on a minute, what? Are you kidding me?" One of the things we like to talk about is how do you make a cup of tea? And if you go to the supermarket, there's tea bags and all sorts of stuff, and it's pretty easy. You put the bag in the cup, and then you boil the jug, and then you put the hot water in the cup, and then you might put milk or sugar in, and then drink the tea. So the things that we have to think about as software developers is, where was it grown, planted, harvested, dried, packaged, shipped? We have to think about that stuff. We're thinking in depth, like in real depth, as to how these things have been. From a software development perspective, we're thinking, how are we going to communicate with that package? Does it run on APIs? What kind of APIs? Are they REST? Are they SOAP? Is there something else? And then we're thinking, what kind of data is coming through? Is that data relevant? Do we need to store that data? Do we need to cache that data somewhere? And at what point of time do we need to get rid of that data? Then, we think about things like, how are we going to display this to the user? What colors are going to mean what to, this is the user experience. What colors are going to mean what to the user? How do they make a difference to how people are using this? So what I'm trying to say here is, making a cup of tea isn't easy, and building software is not easy, or even installing or implementing software is not easy. One of the examples here is that, we were working with a development company that thought that they would be able to just use a pre-built component for a particular function within a bit of software that they were building. when we got involved, we realized that there was actually no pre-built software that would do this. So what they were looking for was a control, a calendar control in this particular case. And the calendar control needed to be able to do particular things that none of the existing calendar controls on the market, even the paid ones, were able to manage. So we needed to actually custom build that. Now, when the client looked at this, they said, hang on a minute, what do you mean it's going to take 8 weeks to develop that? I thought you said you could buy it off the shelf. And, we kind of, that's when, after we'd stepped in and said, hang on a minute, this isn't going to meet your needs. Either we change your needs or we change how we approach this. And at the end of the day, this bit of functionality was quite crucial to the success of the project. My advice to anyone starting a new project or a new software development project is spend a day or two before you begin just workshopping all of the deliverables and understand all of those little intricacies of how you expect things to go. And this is going to be of a huge benefit because you're going to understand the business outcomes, and those business outcomes are crucial to delivering a piece of software that is going to meet expectations. It doesn't even matter that you don't go into the solution. What it does matter is that you understand what the outcomes of that problem are. The other thing, prioritize. Make sure you understand and make sure your developers understand what's absolutely crucial and what's not crucial. Because otherwise you'll end up with all of the non-crucial easy stuff and none of the crucial hard stuff. That day or two at the beginning of a software development project will absolutely provide hundreds of points towards your project success. All right, so another thing that happens is the people that are building these products often underestimate what's involved in ongoing support and delivery. So quite a lot, and this is more than 50% of the time, I come across projects that are the company that are building the project have said, yes, this project is built. But then they've got a product that they're supporting, and they just don't think that anything about what they're doing to deliver or support this project or this product. We hear it quite often, we'll just get someone off Upwork to deliver this. And they probably do a great job of that. And, maybe it's a team of offshore developers, maybe it's someone off Upwork, maybe it's maybe it's a marketing company in Melbourne. They will deliver the product and then they'll step back and everything's delivered. The thing is, technology changes every day, and there are things that need to happen to keep that product up to date. And often, where we come in, we're hearing stories about products that are no longer supported. For example, we're currently looking after a product that's in an older version of PHP, which is no longer supported, and there's no way for us to update that. It completely needs to be rebuilt. If the product had been maintained throughout its life cycle, then we probably would have been able to update that. But right now, it's more or less cheaper to do a rebuild than it is to change the code to suit. I spoke about this a little bit before, but one of the things that we find, especially in medium-sized companies, the sort of, let's say 200 to around 200 to 250 staff, they think they can rely on internal IT to deliver these projects. Now, don't get me wrong, because I've been in this position. I've been the internal IT department, and as that internal IT department, you want to say yes to everything. The fact of the matter is, as an internal IT person, your primary goal is to keep all of the systems up. If you're busy doing another project, then you're just not going to be able to concentrate on BAU. And BAU equals business as usual. So business as usual becomes a huge priority for anyone who is working on a project. And often what happens is the project takes a second seat to or a backseat to the actual day-to-day job of everybody of what you're doing. And it's a really sticky situation because you know that in 2 months' time, somebody's going to be coming to you and saying, hey, let's actually get this project done rather than faffing around and waiting. But most of the time, you're busy trying to do, we need this report changed, or we need to add a field to this database. It just won't work unless you are totally dedicated to that project. And that's where companies like TeamScale and One Bright Cloud and several other companies, and I'm not saying that it's just us, but many other companies, if you're an external company, you can come in and focus only on this project. You don't have the distractions of the email server is down, or can you fix my BlackBerry? That doesn't happen anymore. So, as an example, we're working on with a company here on the Gold Coast, and they had a goal to move off their Exchange server by a certain date because they needed to. They'd given this job to their internal IT department several times, and it sort of got delayed and stalled for about 5 to 6 months because it just wasn't seen as critical. So this went on for about nearly a year before we sort of put our heads up and went, hang on a minute, something needs to change here because you have a goal to get off Exchange, because Exchange was the Exchange server they had was old, and the server that it was sitting on was old and out of support, and a security risk. And the thing is, the internal IT department had created a hybrid solution where email was routing to both their Exchange server and Office 365. And when we came in there, we were going, this has to happen really quickly because you have now got a routing nightmare in this whole setup. So we came in and we actually migrated them within about 3 months because this is a global company, and it was important to get it done really quickly. We understood that their internal IT had other priorities, and we needed to work with them to do the support on Office 365 after we'd migrated them. But the migration was paramount because the internal IT department was spending more time managing the Exchange server than they were on anything else. So my advice in that is talk to your internal IT and get advice by all means, and they should be included in any IT projects that you're undertaking. It's crucial to involve them because they're the people that will be inheriting this stuff, when the outsourcing teams are done. If there's a possibility to borrow someone from the team, do it, because they're the people who know the organization, and when they go back into the day-to-day team, they're going to know this inside out, and that's really important. But you need to create that clear delineation between business as usual and project work. Look, one of the other things that has come up a lot, and I spoke about this earlier, but people don't fully understand what's available in the market. Especially if you're not in technology and you're not following it day to day. We don't have David on tonight, but if you spoke to David, he's a cutting edge guy. He knows things that are going to be mainstream in 10, 20 years' time. So we're often involved in projects where we get involved because a COO or a CMO has come back from some sort of trade show, and they've got the latest, greatest app to take the industry by storm. Now, generally, these solutions have been available in other forms, or they're out there already, and most of the IT people know about them. But let's say that the marketing director comes back from this trade show and he's going, "You guys have got to install this. This is the best thing. I've already signed up a deal with these guys," and it's not the best product. Vendors are not always the best people to keep your interests in mind. So a vendor is out there to talk to you about how they can put their product into your system or into your environment. You need to, as a business owner, you need to back off and say, here are my business outcomes, and then trust the people who understand the technology and keep up with technology to say, here's what we can do to achieve those business goals. The people that I'm talking about don't have time to do product research, and they don't really understand it. So, and I know this is a vendor. You go to a trade show, and the first thing you want to do is you want to talk to people about how you can fit your product or service into their ecosystem. One of the examples I have of that is a small to medium company that were looking to implement IBM Watson, which is a massive sales marketing cloud solution. And they're not that big. They just, the cost of that would have been phenomenal for their budget. Yet there was all the buzzwords like AI, and I'm sure someone said blockchain in there. I don't know. They did a product evaluation which began pointing out the features that they could have used, and all of those buzzwords, and I won't say buzzwords, but the things on the outer that really, wow, that's amazing. We can do that. Oh, that's great. But what they failed to think about was what is our core service? What are we trying to do here? What are we actually doing now? And how can we improve on that? And a lot of the things that they didn't realize wouldn't have been met. So, one of the core things was they use a lot of SMS. And at this point in time, IBM Watson didn't allow them to do SMS marketing. They would have had to have gone out to a third-party provider, and that would have been more money. And that's one of the other big things is this was considerable cost, like probably twice the budget they currently had. We came in, we did an evaluation, and we found that there were a lot more suitable products than IBM Watson. And we've done this with companies that have wanted to implement Salesforce as well. Don't get me wrong, I love Salesforce, and I think it's an amazing tool, and I think it's great in a large organization that can use it and has the processes and the power to get away with it. But for most of the small to medium companies, they don't need that. We ended up looking at a couple of solutions, one of them being HubSpot, the other being ActiveCampaign. And both of those were considerably cheaper, but did a better job of engaging their customers to do what they wanted them to do. This was a huge eye opener because basically the costs went from a significant portion of their marketing budget down to quite palatable and better than what they were currently spending on their existing in-house systems. So my advice there is to understand what's important and list out the core functions, even the ones that you assume. And when you're talking about automated email marketing, you assume that it can do automation and email and marketing. But a lot of these tools out there are focused on larger organizations or much smaller organizations, like one person. In this particular case, things like ClickFunnels wouldn't have worked because it just doesn't suit the environment. There's a couple of websites like Google, obviously Google, but Product Hunt is a good one that I look at. And the other thing is I just go to Google and type in alternatives to, then type in the name of the product that they're looking at. Look, one of the major issues we see in IT projects or anything that we're dealing with really is that companies today, I think they've lost the art of hiring for a team fit. Maybe they haven't. Maybe it's just the people that I've seen, and I don't want to be disparaging to anyone, but we work a lot with outsourcing companies, and what we find is that when you're hiring people to work in a team on a product or a project, they are very skill focused and not necessarily personality focused. So what happens is you get people with great skills, but they don't fit on the team. And this happens a lot with BPOs in various countries where they set up an offshore team, and they're like, great, we need 3 .NET devs, and we need a project manager, we need a couple of testers, we need a BA, and if we've got all of that, then we should be fine. But the team doesn't work as a team, and that's really important. That you should hire the person that's right for the team, over the person who has the skills if that person's not right for the team. And by all means, the best person for the job is the person who fits with the team and has the skills. But if someone doesn't quite have the skills that you're after, but they're an incredible fit for the team, hire them. They're the right person. I mean, one of the examples we have of that is a small team in the Philippines where 15 people, and they had set about building this team based on skills, like I said, and where they were trying to replace a support team here that was in Australia in order to have that Australian team work on another more important project. The personalities in that team really started to be abrasive, and they were clashing a lot between them internally. But of course, because of the distance and the culture, that feedback wasn't given to the leaders back here in Australia, and it just seemed like the team was doing a bad job. And as a consequence, the client came to us saying, "Hey, we're going to have to, we're at the point of cancelling this contract with our vendor because they're just not doing the right job. And, we know that there's a cost saving here, and we know that there's a scale. The reason we're doing this is because of scale. But we can't continue if they're not delivering." So we spent a few days. It was actually only a couple of days before we discovered this. And we found that one of the members of the team was quite toxic. We took everyone of the team aside, and we talked to them individually with local representation as well. And the really good thing that came out of that was we managed to restructure that team in a way that the toxic person was no longer able to affect the other people in the team. That was really significant because the other people in the team suddenly became really engaged and super productive and super communicative, because prior to this change, they were only allowed to communicate through this one person who was actually being the toxic person. That particular person actually, this role didn't suit her anymore, so she had to leave. And that's great because, obviously she went on to a role that was more suited to that style of outsourcing. One of the last things I want to talk about is the tendency to just get started and we'll figure it out later. And I'm not a huge advocate for designing everything up front. But the really hard thing is that you need to understand, and I've said this before 20 minutes ago, you need to understand your business outcomes. You need to understand what you expect from a project. If you don't understand that, then you're never going to get to the point where you can deliver on that. Relying on a development team to design as they build, that's called prototyping, and that comes with a price. You're going to be building a prototype that doesn't necessarily deliver the outcomes that you want. They're going to be prototyping, trying stuff out. Give this a go. Oh, does this work? Nah, not quite, but hey, we can try it. This is the building blocks of design, but it's not. You need to understand what it is that you want out of this project before you start it, so that the developers can have a good chance of succeeding at delivering those outcomes. So just as an example of that, we prototyped an internal tool for the marketing team of a client we have here. This prototype was about 6 weeks in the making, and we successfully got that approved as a concept that the tool would work. The next stage of that project would have been to build a design document and blah, 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 all of that stuff, But instead, the client decided to move the prototype into production and get their internal IT team to set about changing the prototype to work in production. Now, that code should have been thrown away. We did it in 6 weeks. It was just not good in terms of production code. It proved a concept, and it was really good at proving a concept. But we knew the shortcuts we'd taken, and we knew that we documented all of this. So it was a kind of shock to us when they said they were going to put this into production. Now, as a consequence, it took about 2 years to deliver. We had budgeted about 6 months, but it took about 2 years to deliver this project. And at the end of that project, the internal IT team had thrown their hands up and said, we can't build this. So we had to step back in again and say, okay, well, here's our prototype. Here's what you've built. What are the outcomes we're trying to achieve? We had them from the prototype, from the workshops we'd done beforehand. And the internal IT team had focused so hard on things that didn't need to be done, frankly. And we really struggled to rein those requirements in and say, well, hang on a minute, you need to be able to do this and this and this. But you've delivered 90 other features that you don't need to do straight away. And that's why it's taken you 2 years. So we took the code base, we pared it all back. We went into a situation where we basically went into a war room and said, what are we going to take out? We took out all of the non-urgent requirements, and that was tough on the client because we've already built this is a really common occurrence. Yeah, but you built it without having the scope of the outcomes that you required. And they were resistant to change. They were so resistant to, this is the way we do it now. How come you can't do it this way? And often when you build a new product, you need to be flexible in the way that you approach things so that you can say, you know what, this is the way that we did it, but here's the outcome we need. And that outcome is still being met. And, we're also saving a couple of steps. So, let's think about that. Following that, we actually insisted on a whole month of documentation. So we spent 1 month documenting what we'd delivered so that the next time that they decided to give this to their internal IT department to do whatever, they could commit to, the internal IT department would have the documentation that they needed to change this and to do what they needed to do. So in the system's been in use for about 5 years, and it's been stable for about at least the last 3 years. And, they've reduced their costs by over 50% in this particular case because they didn't need to worry about a lot of the stuff that they were working on. They just needed to worry about the stuff that needed to be done. So my advice there is to understand the outcomes that the company needs and prioritize them again. Don't start the project without an outcome in mind. Don't worry about the solution. The outcome is the most important thing. Work iteratively, so understand in detail what you'll be working on next, but have a sketch for the rest of it. Just a sketch, we think we're going to be doing this, and it's okay to change as long as the outcome stays the same. That outcome needs to actually really be paramount in how people are delivering the development project. So that's my rant on the mistakes that people make during software development projects. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll have David back next week with his internet fixed and working, and I'm hoping that we'll also have a few more interviews lined up in the future. If you enjoy this podcast, please like and subscribe and tell your friends about it because that's really important. If you've got any comments, feel free to reach out to us. My email is on the website and so is David's. Or you can just look us up on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is pretty common for us. So, looking forward to hearing your comments. Great to talk to you again. Goodbye.